Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Minds Panel Show, and we had a lot of trouble trying to reclaim the law. So we're going to try to do this for anybody that is hearing or sees the post. Try to jump into the room, and we want to hear everybody's perspective on this topic. And so for right now, um, Gus Spiders is kind of listening in.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I will elect myself to read his post.
Okay, that sounds
So
good. And
Gov Spiders, I can hear you both clear. All right. Well, that's good. Welcome, Gov Spiders.
so I guess you want to start it off with, I guess, your interest in the topic.
Okay. Um. Okay, I'll start it out. Um. So, how I became interested in the law. Um. My ex-girlfriend was pregnant with my son, and I was talking to her mom and her brother about certain things about the government. And her brother says, kind of like, because we were just batting different little bits of information back and forth, and her brother says, "Yeah, didn't you know that the government uses the birth certificate as collateral in order to monetize bonds for the Federal Reserve to print money? So basically, the government's using the birth certificate as collateral to print money." And that kind of made me go, that makes a lot of sense, and that's pretty fucking crazy. So I did a lot of research, and there's a guy by the name of Rodney Dale Class, and he's probably one of the best and most articulate and knowledgeable guys that I've found to speak on the subject. And you can find him on YouTube, and he lays it out clear. He's been into this for probably 20 years, and he's got a team of people that he's working with, and he's got a huge case going on right now in Washington D.C. over a weapons charge. But I'm not going to get too deep into that. But on a final note on the birth certificate thing, there is some truth to it, but it's not quite as black and white as the government just uses the birth certificate as a as collateral. Um, Beyond that, the like right now we're in an election cycle. I really don't even like the word election because the uh, those are us peons. Our vote doesn't count if you've done any research into the electoral college, and yet you have all these people out protesting and throwing rocks and rioting and all that kind of thing. And it'd be nice if people who were really actually trying to learn about this stuff could educate them and show them the error of their ways. Um, Also, the next kind of subject I got into was the driving as a professional occupation, and that you can use your private property, i.e., your automobile, for traveling on the roads that we paid for through taxation, making them public property. And I've actually beat a charge in Arizona, and anyone can look it up. I could actually, I've got the judgment order still with me that the judge ruled that I was not responsible for providing registration for my personal property. I didn't beat the insurance charge though. I I forgot a Supreme Court site called Hale versus Hinkle that I think would have supported my cause. It was pretty funny to watch the cop blow up in court though, when the judge ruled that I didn't have to register my truck. Um, but after going through different kind of like subsections or topics of law, and listening to guys like Dean Clifford on YouTube, I pretty much have come to the same conclusion that he did, that all their laws are just garbage. And I pretty much wrote four for myself that I kind of adhere to. That basically, hello tech lords, that one, you don't hurt anyone else. Two, you don't hurt their stuff. Three, you don't hurt the environment that we share. And four, that when you enter into a contract with anyone, that you don't commit fraud. And if you do that, you pretty much are not doing anything wrong. So now I'll turn the floor over to anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's basically what this all boils down to, right? And this is what common law or natural law kind of means, is that how do we just naturally organize ourselves into groups, into a society? Because what has happened is that the system has made all these laws or try to curtail all this stuff to benefit themselves, like special interests, and they write all these stupid laws into the books. But there's basic principles, what you laid out, and this kind of goes back to like these universal things. Treat people how you want to be treated. Every individual should have free will, and it should be protected as long as it doesn't infringe on someone else's free will. And you should have, the right to your property, even your free speech. This is why we have the Constitution.
I disagree with that. I got to disagree with that, but
okay.
Continue.
Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. I was just saying I disagree with the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, okay. What part of the Constitution, I guess? Let's go into that. That's kind of interesting.
The whole
Constitution. Okay, get into that. That's interesting.
Okay. First off, I'm going to narrate for Gov Spiders. Gov Spiders writes in, I've got a personal narrator. Thanks for having me in chat. Hey, Gov Spiders, thanks for being in chat. Smiley face. The importance of the law became apparent to me just simply realizing that it is the guidelines in which I'm allowed to live my life. It then slowly became clearer and clearer that there was a lack of representation and that the law did not represent the needs of the people. That over decades, the system has been manipulated to support only one breed of sociopathic and elitists. Licenses are for commercial use and do not dictate your rights. Do not enter into a contract with any kind that you do not agree with. And that really touches on a lot of good points there, Gov. I would really like to know what your handle represents, by the way. And that kind of fits into what I was saying about what I disagree with in the Constitution, with there being a Constitution. First and foremost, it's pretty well laid out in the 14th Amendment. And I get into this discussion with people when I get talking about the law, and they tell me, they try to label me as an American citizen. And I tell them, do you have any evidence of this? Do you have any proof? And it's a setup question, because they always tell me, well, weren't you born here? And I tell them, no, I was born on Earth. And they kind of laugh or whatever, and they're like, yeah, but what part? On the surface. That's where I was born. I no longer recognize these fictitious entities known as states, countries, counties, towns, because I look at myself now as an earthling. And that pretty much puts you, me, and everyone else in the same status. And when we have the same status, there's no discrimination, racism, socioeconomic differences, that are recognized just in that one label. The only other thing I might label myself as is a man, because I happen to have a Y chromosome.
Yeah.
And another reason I disagree with the Constitution, and this is open for debate, is I read Black's Law Dictionary. Because if you want to understand what these ass clowns or sociopaths, as GovSpiders pointed out, they are highly antisocial behavior as per psychology talk. That number one, if you read any of Lysander Spooner's writings, he'll tell you that the Constitution's a contract. Very well. Did I sign it? No, and I have no intention to, because that would make me, because there's two requirements to be a citizen. One is born or naturalized. I'm sorry I got off from this point. And the second is subject to the jurisdiction. Well, it took me a couple months to really wrap my head around jurisdiction. And jurisdiction is gained through consent, and I don't consent. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a United States citizen because I consented by contract to be a part of the armed services. The same as if you're holding a public office, mayor, alderman, senator, president. That's what makes you a citizen. If you're enforcing the will of the state, being a law enforcement officer, or if you're a member of the British or the Barristers Accredited Registry, I actually have the statute wrote down somewhere where that's a federally chartered corporation. You can find that in the United States Code. I don't know the title and section off the top of my hand. It's somewhere here in one of my several notebooks, I'm sure. But if you look up the word to constitute or a constitutor in the dictionary, it means someone who's in contract. And again, I'm not contracted to be a citizen. So, all right, I'll turn it over.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you're saying, and this is, I guess, where it's us as humanity is what it boils down to. And okay, so going back to kind of like the social contract, and we touched on this.
I never signed it.
Yeah, in the Infinite Imaginarium social contract, Holly brought up kind of Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, and their famous debate about social contracts. And Hobbes said that man being in a state of nature was of violence and chaos, and so in order to protect each other from that, they formed a governance, and so the natural state of man is in chaos and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of goes to the root of what these going back to what GovSpider says, that people, to get control, started to form these basically man-made laws and definitions to set us apart from each other, from nature, from the world, and I think it was a power play to say, and this is what is the old saying that the road to hell is paved with the best intentions.
Yeah.
Where they try to sell you, this is for your own good. You can't trust yourself. You can't trust your neighbor. You can't trust the world. So we're going to protect you, but just give us all your rights. And this is kind of what we touch on in the Crypto Hustle show all the time, and with the Bitcoin stuff. And he says that it's freedom. you get freedom from the banks, but it also means with freedom comes responsibility. So like you're responsible for, ultimately that's what it comes down to. In this world, in this life, you're responsible ultimately for your own self. No matter what anybody else says, no matter what laws are in the books, yes, they, and this kind of goes into what Freeborn Angel always talks about, is law is only there by force, and if we get out the force, and then we could have that true freedom, which is true, because but if we I think goes back to what you were talking about with people being more aware of what the common law is, or what even the source of where these law books are, that you could fight back in a sense in court, what you were saying about, like, it's not lawful about your registration and this and that. Right. But I think too is that part of it is that we need, and I think we could do it now, and this is kind of just my own thing that I've been studying on a lot, with what's going on around the surface of the internet. And this is with the blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. Now, it's hard, and it's not easy.
Choose technology?
Blockchain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And it's not hard, it's not easy, but what they're trying to do is build a system to bypass the normal system. So you have BitNation, which is kind of like a global agreement that we're all citizens, and you kind of like sign up, and then you have like this kind of self-decentralized governance. But this is where it's kind of important, I think, too, to even go into trying to have that natural / common law, like defining just the basic principles, like treat others how you want to be treated, that we all have free will, and the only way someone should kind of mediate that is if they infringe on someone else's free will. And anything else you could think of that would be just a basic principle of living / governing yourself.
And I think that's where the core of it is, that of the governing, okay? Governments want to argue that everyone is unfit to govern their own life. Well, if everyone is unfit to govern their own life, how the hell is anyone else fit to govern everyone else's life?
Yeah, that would mean they're unfit to govern our lives as well, right? By their logic.
Correct, yeah. I'm just going to jump in for GovSpiders. Except it says GovSpiders refers to converge, concealmentaire.info, map.jpg. I guess that's a link. And worldcitizen.solutions. He wants to know if Tech Lords wants to chime in. I see his microphone is muted.
Well, I can unmute it.
There you go.
Well, if you insist, I have a different view. First and foremost, I'm a spirit experiencing the physical realm. And regarding free will, we have very little. That's because there's a cosmic law that says that you cannot incarnate in the physical realm without some sort of program. So everything is like programmed in advance. So very, very little free will. Free will only exists when you get out of the physical realm, when you ascend to other densities. But that's a cosmic law. Regarding contracts and governance, I govern myself. And I don't govern anybody else, and I don't let anybody govern me. I've been off the grid from the government since '97.
Congrats.
The only thing I contract with is a driver's license because it's a pain in the butt if you don't have one. But for the rest, I'm off the grid. I had a business for 12 years and government never knew about it. So, I never charged 1 penny in tax. And if I can bypass any tax, I will. Income tax is illegal, both in Canada and the States. It was never.
Is that where you're at, Canada?
Never voted in the Senate. Here in Canada, anyways, it was never voted in the Senate. It was just on a voluntary basis back in the 30s, but they kept it. And now they try to make you believe that it's mandatory. Well, it's mandatory because since the Federal Reserve hijacked the currencies in most of the countries around the world, they installed a system based on debt, and every time a debt is created, somebody goes bankrupt somewhere because you can never pay back everything, never. So that's one thing. But coming back to governance and social contracts, I govern myself, and I don't need any technology to apply a social contract with anyone. If I want to enter into a business deal with somebody, a good handshake will do. But as long as polarity in the mind will exist, in the collective mind, there will always be people taking advantage of other people. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, feel free to jump in anytime. That's good stuff there, Tech Lords. And I agree with probably almost everything that you said. The only thing I might kind of deviate a little bit on is your point on free will, and I'll expound on that a little bit. You said you're a spirit, and so that's the tangent I'm going to take. So the free will, or my free will as I see it, occurs within my own mind, which I guess you could say is generated by my spirit, and my body is merely the translation between my consciousness and the physical realm that we all kind of interact upon. I don't know how everybody else would see that, but yeah, I actually gave up my driver's license, and I gave away my truck to my brother. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass to live without those things, but I seem to be managing so far, and I'm hoping that the longer I do it, the more comfortable I am with it and the more ways I can find around it. As far as getting off the grid, yeah, I'm really trying to get that direction. But it's kind of deviating from the law subject a little bit. I don't know, Satori, or hold on, let me read what Web Spiders has got here real quick.
Hold on a second.
Okay, yes.
I want to get back on free will.
Okay.
Let me explain myself. I am a spirit experiencing the physical realm. The ego, which is polarized, does not have free will. All decisions come from spirit. And those decisions go through a quote-unquote program. Now, everything is programmed in advance. So the ego's free will does not exist. The spirit free will exists through the physical reality. But the ego, the physical ego, believes that he generates his thoughts in his mind.
Is that maybe the filter that the spirit goes through?
Well, the filter that the spirit goes through is the astral world, the astral entities, the dead people. Their job is to filter or to buffer the light which is too strong if the ego is not ready, if the ego is not transparent enough. But that's another show. That's very
right.
But anyways, that's my point of view.
Yeah. I guess I'll touch on a little bit what Gov Spiders was saying, and actually, yeah, that's probably more of our Sunday show with the Infinite Imaginarium, which we'll probably get into that kind of stuff. But so I can see the idea. This is Gov Spiders. I can see the idea of everything in nature and within science being pre-programmed. Consciousness is the dynamic part, as far as we know. Blood, geographic location, nationality, title, race, etc. These things don't matter. You are your mind. And in a lot of ways, how I see it, and I guess we get off a little bit of topic here, but I think what the same battle that we have within ourselves is the same battle that society at large has with itself. And what I mean by this is that our ego is what's programmed by society. It's how we think we should act in accordance with society, or how we think we should act in accordance with our family. And even when we were at this vulnerable stage when we were little, subconsciously we mimicked and latched on to how our parents acted. And then later, when we brought in our horizons, we started to download how we were supposed to act within society. And I think so all of that is programmed, and that's how you form your ego. You form the idea of yourself. Now, there is something, I like to use consciousness more than spirit, but consciousness is something that's deep inside you, where you get those feelings, and it goes beyond words, and it goes beyond this programming. And this is why majority of the people, if you're not a psychopath, feel empathy, feel feelings towards their fellow man, and that's what kind of stops us from killing each other. It's not some law that stops us from killing each other, or even rationality. Sometimes rationality does stop us, but we have that conscious, like we frame it in language, but we have something deep inside us telling us that we're kind of part of humanity. So, like, if you kill somebody, it's because you don't want to kill that this society, or this is outer organism that is the human society, and we are all part of that, and even more part of the world. And you're calling yourself a citizen of Earth, a citizen of the world, and the world we're like blood cells, or cells of the world. That's something I think I came across, actually, and this ties into the psychedelic panel. When I was on mushrooms, I have always kind of intellectually knew this, but once I kind of tapped into which mushrooms I think do is help deprogram you, in a sense, and you get to your base natural state and the essence of everything.
Your id instead of your ego.
Yeah, and so once you attach into that, you get this way how things really work. And it's so interesting because I always struggle with this, and I don't think it's clear cut as that, oh, we don't have free will or we do have free will. I think it's like a combination of both. That we think the illusion of the ego having free will, that, oh, we could do this or that, and a lot of times people mistake that, oh, that I could, oh, they try to exercise free will as far as, oh, I'm gonna start robbing people, oh, I'm not gonna give a shit about my fellow man, and I'm a badass, and that's this media projection of anarchy, right? Anarchy is chaos.
Thank you for that. Yes, the media projection of anarchy.
Yeah, the media projection of anarchy, but real anarchy is being in that natural state of who you are, deprogramming all of that society, and you taking responsibility of yourself. But if you truly learn about yourself, take responsibility for yourself, you also have to take responsibility for everybody else. And the way you do that is how you act with everybody else. If you want to be treated well, you treat other people well. And yes, some people will disappoint you, but then that's when you know to cut them off. And it's kind of basically simple as that. You give people chances because it's hard. I know for myself it's been hard to always act accordance to my conscience or to my soul or to what's deep inside me. And there, I mean, when I was younger, I would sometimes be like, oh, fuck this, fuck that, and it was actually to protect myself because I didn't want to get like hurt. So I said I didn't care, but I really did care, and this like made me act out in different ways as far as getting really fucked up or doing little things that I probably shouldn't have done or taking risks that I shouldn't have done because I didn't want to, like, I wanted to say, oh, fuck society and have this projection of what I thought being free will / anarchy was about. But it's a process. I mean, most people learn by mistakes. Sometimes you need something shocking, and which is kind of weird because it goes back to society. I think this is the process that's happening right now. It's such a parody and such theater that what's happening that I can't fathom that majority of the people don't get that when they see, you know, what you're saying about the so-called elections. And I think it's being expressed wrong as far as people protesting against Trump or this and that, because they're not focusing on, let's say, the real enemy. The real enemy is the system, is the structures that the government and these corporations and these selective few have projected onto us via media, via laws, and all this kind of stuff. And we're still playing that game if we think, oh, we just go out and protest, or we go out and make these memes like fuck Trump or fuck Hillary, which yeah, they're bad people, or they're kind of like just logos. They're marketing. They're not even the people. Like, say, even if Trump gets involved, there's still the structure that's gonna that makes the wheels turn on this society. And I think it starts with the individual and getting to know who you are. And I think once you get to know who you are, you see the similarities of everybody. I mean, I'll say it right here. When I was younger, I got arrested for having hash on me, and it's a felony to have concentrated THC. So I spent the weekend in county jail. And I'm here in LA, and county jail is no joke here in LA. It's pretty crazy there. But I was in probably the worst situation I've ever been with, quote unquote, all these criminals and all these bad people. Yes, there were some people that were out of their mind, but majority of the people that if you acted without said ego, without thinking you're better than everybody, and acted with some little bit of respect, you found out that even though these people were hardened by society, hardened by life, they still wanted to have kind of a conversation with you. They still kind of wanted to treat people well. Now, they were guarded a lot, but I mean, I would sit down with all sorts of different people, and just because of how I acted, I had no problems. I had no one ever come up to me and try to shake me down like you would hear people would say, like, oh, where are you from, and then all this kind of stuff. They kind of left me alone. I left them alone. But we had moments where I saw the humanity in the worst situation. And even in that situation, people bond together. And it's kind of funny. The people that you have to worry about in county jail are the guards, are the authority that's supposed to keep order. They're the ones that are the most threat to you.
Right.
And that's like a symbolism or a metaphor for society at large. They project that, oh, you got to watch out for the minorities, or you got to watch out for the Muslims, or you got to watch out for young people, or you got to watch out for anonymous, or you got to watch out for this person and that person. But all the time, the real enemy or the real threat is the system itself.
Right, because they're the ones who are initiating the force.
Yeah, they're the ones with the force, and they're the ones creating the whole climate, and they're the ones that are kind of projecting these laws or rules of the game, and we think we have to play by them. And simply, and even when you, like what we're saying, the projection of what anarchy is, that's still playing their game. If you're going out there destroying property, you're going out there saying fuck this or fuck that, because you're kind of giving up your own natural
Right.
governance in a way.
Yep. All right. I'm going to read a couple definitions here to try to bring it back into the law.
Law, yeah.
Okay. Just to relate it to a story, I was watching a remake of a John Wayne movie. I can't think of the name of it, and it's got hell, the name escapes me right now. But anyways, watching this movie, this young lady says something in the movie that I had to stop the movie and go look this shit up. And what she says is something to the effect of blah, blah, blah. But the term she used is malum in se. Okay, and it's a Latin phrase. And if anyone like me studies law, you come across a lot of Latin. In malum in se, it's 3 words. It's defined as an act that is in itself, or in its very nature, being illegal because it violates the natural, moral, or public principles of a civilized society. In criminal law, it is one of the collection of crimes which are traditional and not just created by statute, which are malum prohibitum, which is the second definition. Okay? The malum prohibitum is wrong due to being prohibited, which refer to crimes made so by statute, compared to crimes based on English common law and obvious violations of society standards, which are defined as malum in se. Statutory crimes include violations of regulatory acts, etc., etc., etc. And that really clears it up for me, because you having hash in your pocket, apparently, or allegedly, violates nobody's rights. So it doesn't harm anyone. It's not harming the environment, you know. So even if one were under the influence of a controlled substance, it's still not the controlled substance which is at fault here. It's the person in possession of it and their actions, you know. So this government that, as they want to call themselves, this mafia, because that's really what it is, it's a protection racket, you know. Pay me taxes so you can be protected. Protected from what? Protected from what I'm going to do to you if you don't pay your taxes. You know, that's right, Gov Spiders. No harm, no foul. No victim, no crime. Right. It's it's called. It's written in their books, because there is some things that they have to have in their laws in order to kind of get people to buy into it. But it's Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Section 12, subsection B, whatever Part 6. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 12B6 states that, like, if you get a speeding ticket, that it's the state is bringing a claim against you for which there is no relief. And by relief, they mean that, you know, if you were speeding and they want to extort money from you to pay for something that you damaged. Okay, so did you damage anything while you were speeding? You know, did you harm the road? Did you run over someone? Did you know what I'm saying? Did you cause harm? Well, that's what the ticket is for. It's so that they can extract your money from you in order to make amends or repairs to something which you damaged. You didn't by speeding, so therefore even though they won't throw the ticket out for it, which is bullshit, you didn't, like Gov Spider says, no harm, no foul, no victim, no crime. So even though I've studied their books for 5 years now, that the problem is you can know the law, you can know the rules of procedure and whatever. The problem that we're having is, how do we force them to enforce it? Or how do we make them go away? Period. Because I don't want to be a part of their system because it's not my system.
Yeah, I'm totally on that same page. And I guess, me recently, and it's been for a while, because I'm kind of like ticklers as well. I'm a little bit off the grid. Every once in a while, I go and get like a kitchen job, but most of the time I do catering and hustle my own money on the side, and I do other things too as well to kind of get money. I don't have a driver's license either. No credit cards. No, I really have I just kind of took out a lot of stuff that ties me into system. I mean, the only thing that I'm really tied into is with my computer and on the internet. But other than that, even prior to Minds, I was not even using social media or anything like that. But where I felt kind of like this, where I felt some freedom on Minds to express myself and even to grow and to expand on this kind of stuff. But going back to, I guess it comes down to, how do we get back to kind of self-governance? How do we get to have some kind of natural state of the law or some common law? And I believe what is happening right now, and what I was mentioning earlier about the blockchain technology, there's something called decentralized a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. There's also decentralized conglomerates where people are just band together. There's the Bit Nation, which it's all about decentralizing, and this is the basic principle of the cypherpunks, or the whole movement of blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, is saying that the problem is with centralized authority. And why centralized authority is wrong is because of what we were saying. Like, centralized authority says, oh, you guys can't govern yourselves because you guys can't be trusted. People are bad in the roots, and we need these laws and this and that, and they need to be enforced for the betterment of everybody. But if you follow their logic, says, well, then you're not fit to govern or to see over anything too, because you're a human as well. Like, right. What makes you different or whatever? That's what the decentralized movement is all about. It's like, okay, no central power. It's with these agreements, social contracts, whatever, but the power is with everybody's equal, and the power is up to the individual, and they're creating this blank slate, which is called the blockchain, is a way to organize information via networks and have a secure and trusted way so no one can corrupt the files. But it's up to us, and this is where we're going to keep on having conversations like this, and hopefully the next time we have a common law or natural law discussion or panel, I think we're going to have to just do Google Hangouts because it seems like it's more reliable.
More stable.
Yeah.
Imagine that, right?
Yeah. We have to use the system to talk shit about the system, but that's another...
And if you're listening, fuck the system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're probably definitely filed somewhere in their system. But because we need more people to talk about this. We need more minds on this topic. And
you can get on YouTube and see it's blowing up, and a lot of people are getting their stuff taken off of YouTube and censored. Yeah.
And Google is part of YouTube, and this is what the whole thing is. But see, this is where we need to use both simultaneously, the new systems and the old systems, just for the sake, because what they have is a little bit better. That's why I'm kind of focusing on my YouTube channel, is to broadcast what we're doing on Minds out to a bigger audience, because it just needs to be done. But going back to, I was reading some of your stuff, but so this is this is what's going on right now, and this is where I think it kind of has to merge, as far as the common law movement and the natural law with the blockchain, because the blockchain has the blanket blank slate for it to be done, and the common law and all this great stuff that's going on with that has the philosophy. So now you have a place where you can implement said ideas and governance of common principles of humanity. And this is what was kind of fascinating. Not too long ago, Minds Gaming wrote kind of like what was it, a Declaration for Humanity or something like that?
Had done.
Yeah, and prior to this, a long time ago, John Perry Barlow had a similar thing, and it's called the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. And basically saying that cyberspace is the new frontier, and he says the new home of mine, and this is where this is why internet freedom is so important. And this is why, because we need to keep on having this conversation, because they're trying to implement the old, I've been calling it the old story, the story of control and centralized power, and projecting certain things out to us and keeping us busy with stupid pop culture or whatever from us.
Kardashian.
Yeah, and stopping, and this is why we all moved to like Minds, because there's a little bit more of real talk and a little bit less of memes, and we're progressing, and we should keep on progressing, because they don't want us to really think for ourselves. They don't want us to see the commonalities of everybody. We talked about this earlier too, when we were talking about the new Tithe movement and having a translator, because once you start spreading yourself out across your borders, out across your town and this
their borders, across their borders.
Yeah, their borders. And you find out that, yeah, we all kind of like outwardly or even how we project ourselves seems to be different, but once you have a conversation with somebody, you see commonalities and you see the commonness of humanity.
Yeah, we have more in common than we'd have different.
Yeah, and part of the old story is to emphasize all those differences, but what hopefully we could do with everything is to try to merge it. But let's touch on the principles again, and let's just kind of highlight them.
I got something. I got something on that.
Yeah, you were saying there's I think it was 4 basic principles?
Yeah, the 4 laws that I live by.
Yeah, there you go. So the first one is self-ownership, right?
Yeah, and it comes under self-ownership is, 1 is do no harm, do anything you want so long as you don't harm another person. You don't step on their rights to do what they want. You know, that includes physical harm. 2, you don't harm their stuff. You don't, do a lawn job with your car on somebody else's yard or whatever. You don't harm anyone else's property. That includes public property as well. The third being, don't shit where you eat, I guess. Don't fuck up the environment, because then you're hurting everyone else that is. If you're spewing fluoride into everybody's drinking water, or whatever the fuck they're spraying in the chemtrails or whatever, And the last one is because contract law pretty much applies to everything. Like right now, you and me and Gov Spiders are engaging in a contract, it's free association. So if you tell someone you're going to do something, you do it. And so if you follow those 4 principles, if you don't step outside those, you're not doing anything wrong. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm going to step back to something here. because I find it helpful. In 1793, okay, 1793, there was a North Carolina Superior Court case after the so-called Civil or Revolutionary War, and I rewrote it here, and it says this was the opinion of the judge, and this ties into sovereignty, self-sovereignty, you know. It says, at the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, unless the African slaves among us may be so called, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equals as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. Turn our attention to the political situation we were in prior to the Revolution and to the political rights which emerged from the Revolution. All the country now possessed by the United States was then a part of the dominions appertaining to the Crown of Great Britain. Everywhere of the land in this country was held immediately or mediately by grants from that crown. All the people of this country were the subjects of the King of Great Britain and owed allegiance to him. From the Crown of Great Britain, the sovereignty of the country passed to the people of it, meaning us, and it was not an uncommon opinion that it's getting a little off subject here. Basically what it's saying is that if you're subject to any entity other than yourself, you're not free. You're subject, and that's one of the reasons I don't like the word citizen. But it basically what this judge in 1793 was saying was that since you're not a subject of the king anymore, you're a king, sovereign yourself. So we already have the right to self-governance. We have the ability for self-governance, but we give it away when we get a driver's license, which is a permission slip. And I see GovSpiders doesn't have a driver's license either, so that makes 4 out of 4 of us right there. To have any sort of, you try to get your Obamacare. Well, you got to jump through their hoops. You want to get food stamps, you got to jump through their hoops. You want to put your child in public school, you got to jump through their hoops. So, you have these rights until you give it away, and the government is well aware of this. If I found this, they all know it, but they're going to put a gun in your mouth to try to convince you otherwise.
Yeah, that's the rule by force thing.
And that's what Freeborn Angels always talking about.
Yeah. And it's also too, not by force too. I mean, the biggest trick too is kind of like force on your mentality, like. So be damn. I just muted you real quick. You could try to unmute yourself and see if we could hear you. Yeah, I think we hear you.
Oh, you turned it back off.
Unmute now.
All right, what's up, B-Dam?
Not much. How we doing? Is my voice coming over clear?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Okay.
Great over here.
Okay, so I have to listen in a little bit so I can catch back up because I had to swap to the laptop and then had to load everything up. So go ahead.
Okay, so let's start with you. I guess, do you want to? We were just talking about all sorts of different things, but let's go back to, I guess, the basic principles of either, however you want to phrase it, common law, natural law. I guess you want to kind of define those for everybody.
Well, first you have to. Well, right now we're working under statutory law, So you have to understand that everything we're doing is under admiralty law, which isn't even getting into the basics yet, because everything that they're applying to us is all statutory. So say, for instance, you're working for a company and the company says, well, you have to wash your hands before you go handle food or whatever. So that's the company rule, company policy. If you're going to work for the company, then you have to do that thing. Well, what's happened is we all elected and signed up to become citizens because we don't know how to fill out applications. Because the applications that they have us fill out, which are contracts, and in a contract and an application means to beg. So when you beg, you give up your rights. So what we've done as American citizens is we've filled out all these contracts and said, hey, I'll follow your company policy rules. And since we've never done anything to show that we're not or we're not reserving our rights in any capacity, then they're just going to go ahead and assume that you've given up all those rights. So, so that's all confusing because now you got to go all the way back to well, what rights do I have? So, and now you have to go all the way back and say, well, who gave the government rights? You know, so you just have to start following this chain backwards. Well, where do you get your rights from? Anybody know? Speak up.
Yeah. Where do you get your rights from? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. Through my studying, rights are hereditary. Your rights exist simply because you do. If you claim to have a right from the Constitution, it's not a right, it's a privilege extended to you by the government.
Okay, let's not talk about Constitution yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
but the right, okay, so your rights come from, let's call it the ultimate creator, because I can't think of any better name to use for that without losing people and then having stupid arguments about religion and all that crap. So what we do is if we just say the ultimate creator, the thing that created something out of nothing, and then in that something that was created, we got an earth, and then on the earth we got man and woman. So the creator of something has the explicit right or implicit right to destroy or allow it to exist. So, and then you back up or you go forward just a little bit. Well, your mother and father created you, so they gave you their rights that they had gained themselves. So you follow it all the way down that chain. So that's how you start saying. So what's the most important right you have?
Self-determination.
How about the right to life?
Well, okay, you got me. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the one that precedes it. Yeah.
So your right to life is the ultimate thing, and then what happened was well, I'm alive, and wherever you landed at on the earth, well, you got a right to be there, right?
Right.
So now we say, well, I have a right to life, I have a right to be here. So you take all these individual people and they start getting together, and then you end up having a group. Well, everybody has the same rights. So now what we have to do is determine, well, what we did was, we got to come up with some rules, you know. So, hey, don't kill anybody. You know, like, I mean, there's really only two rules. Well, the two rules are, the two laws, and they're unwritten, is don't hurt or harm anybody, and don't take anybody's shit. You know, I mean, like, if it's not yours and you didn't create it, then don't take it. You know, at least not without permission. So now from that basis, what did we do as a group? This is when we get into the government. Well, so we establish what each person can do and what rights they have. Well, we got together and said, hey, there's other groups out there, and we need to deal with them, but instead of all dealing with them individually, what we'll do is we'll send somebody over there to talk to them, and then that'll be our representative. So that's how you get your representative government. As we said, hey, as a collective, we picked this guy's going to go over and talk to that guy, and then they'll hash out our problems or whatever. So in the most basic sense, what would you say the purpose of government is? Being that I just said that.
So, Tori, you want to chime in?
I guess to protect those rights. I guess your right to life and I see there's like a big old noise.
Sorry, is it coming from my end or was it just on yours?
I think it's on mine. That's weird.
Okay, so the purpose of government is to protect its people and its property from other governments, peoples, and property. So, and they're the focal point for doing this trade thing. So we have a representative republic, meaning that we selected some people, and they're supposed to deal with other people. The problem is what's happened is instead of them dealing with other people, they started telling us what we have to do.
Right.
And that's where we got this big problem is we more or less turned into slaves because we were, what was it called?
We allowed them to turn us into slaves.
Yeah, the technical word's tacit. We became tacit. And tacit in our response means, let me give you a good example. If we got, say you've got a cup of coffee, and it's sitting on the table, and I reach over and I grab the cup of coffee and I put it in my hand, and then I start taking a drink of it. Whose coffee is it?
It's yours because I didn't speak up.
Exactly. So until you make some kind of claim saying, "Hey, that's my coffee," oh, I'm sorry. Here, let me give that back to you. You know, like I didn't realize it was yours. So you have to make some kind of claim, and that's something we're not doing as people, as far as our responsibility is to raise our hand and say, hey, you can't be doing this. I claim this right. Because what the government is doing, or what all these statutory laws are doing, they're nothing more than complaints. So they're complaining about something, and then they're trying to take you into court and process a complaint. Well, you go into court and you go, well, I have a claim, and a claim outweighs a complaint. So then you get into the problem of knowing what your definitions are, and we're so stupid we don't even know the definition between I and you.
I've got 3 Black's Law dictionaries.
Yeah, well, when you use an I, do you use a capital I or a little I?
I don't capitalize anything anymore.
There you go. So, because once you capitalize it, then...
Capitis diminutio and all that?
Yeah, that Roman thing where, you know, it makes it less. Your slaves were capitalized. When it reduces in status.
Capital letters.
So, and that, I heard you talking earlier, and you said you wanted to talk about the, you know, like the Law of Nations, 1852, the Chitty Esquire version.
Right.
Because that one lays it out, you know, it's only 200 or 300 pages long. Might be 400. I think it's only 300 or 400 pages long. But what it does is it lays out even how to write a constitution. So, and that's where people like, well, how did the founding fathers know to name it a constitution? You know, like, and that was the question I asked. Huh? Constitution
is a contract.
Well, okay,
well,
now you get into Lysander Spooner's argument, because he makes a very good argument about, well, nobody signed that contract. The only contract ever signed was the Declaration of Independence. You know, and then it only applies to those
Who signed it?
12 people or 14 people, however many people signed it, so the Constitution was on its own. But how do you even know to use the word Constitution? Who did we file these paperworks with? And that's where you have to, but if you back up and you get into the Law of Nations, the 1852 version, that's far enough back that they didn't mess that up. And then he referenced it, but what he referenced a lot of was Cicero. So, right. And if you actually listen to any of Cicero's works or understand any of that, which Cicero, actually, our education was basically from like 8 years old to 13 years old, and you learned one thing, and it was called the Trivium. And in it was Cicero's works. So you learned his little phrases, but what the phrases taught you was not only your second language from whatever you have, but it also taught you Latin, and it taught you reasoning and logic. So by just learning his little phrases, you were learning these things. And then if you wanted to go on to further school, then you studied the Quadrivium.
Well, it's been a while since I've heard these phrases. I've looked into them.
But this is why the law book's full of Latin and all this stuff, is to make it confusing, which all that came. So now if you're thinking in Cicero's time, you have to think about, well, who was creating these laws? Why were they doing that? And what it was you had the they weren't even I'll call them crypto-Zionists or Zionists, because then you started getting into the Jesuits and then the Zionists and who's controlling
news and all that.
Yeah, who's controlling things. But really what was important about that was the Talmud. So what the Greeks did, or the Roman Empire did, was they let each state, because each little group or country had its own little traditions and laws. And so the Romans were like, well, hey, do whatever you want, you do that. And that's why they took Jesus to whoever that was to try to get him killed. They didn't do it themselves. They wanted to go get permission, and then after, the head priest or whatever, like, oh, you gotta discipline this guy. He's blasphemous. He's trying to be the king or something, and then they wanted the Roman to lay the sentence upon him to have him crucified or whatever.
Yeah, they were trying to follow the clean hands doctrine.
Exactly. Well, so anybody that stands in judgment of anybody needs to have clean hands, and we need to act with honor. So actually being silent isn't acting with honor, so we have to...
silence is consent.
Yeah, silence is consent, but you're also losing your honor if you don't speak. But what we need to get into the habit of doing is giving conditional replies. So conditional replies are the other little sticking point. So
yeah, Winston Strout really laid that out well.
Who? Winston Strout? Yeah. I like Winston. Winston's the money man. So
yeah, high five on that.
So if you follow Dean Clifford's really good in the law, but the problem is we're not part of the Bar Association. So you can't speak with them, and you can't even really. So now you're getting into the Lentz material where, you have to, you can't play their game. They're not going to listen to you when you play their game.
Right. That's what I was saying earlier.
So when you follow the Lentz rules, it's like, well, hey, get your claim, stand by your claim, because like the second thing is like, well, they always want to go into this, precedent law and all this other like that. You still there? Yeah. The precedent law, where it doesn't matter. I could care less about precedent, because I deal on one step higher than that, and that's maxims of law. So if you know your maxims of law, then those outrule any precedents, because you don't have to prove them anymore.
They're universally true. They're such an old truth that everybody holds them in regard.
Yeah, nobody can mess with a maxim. So you need to get into your Bouvier's dictionary or get your Bouvier's out as far as online, and then find your maxims of law, then copy that, and then print all those things out, and then figure out which ones apply to you that you would use quite often. But that's like, because when you use a maxim, they've got nothing to stand on either, you know. But the problem is, see, we've let it go so far, and the one problem that we have with our government and our religion and all that is they are masters of the art of infiltration. So they infiltrate something good, you know, and then end up taking it over, and then they put their people in charge of it, and then you can't get anything done. You know, it's like GM, you know, like once GM needed money, they're like, okay, well, we'll give you the money, but you have to put this person on the board of directors. And then they say, well, we want this person on the board, and then they get a few people, and then they change the chairman of the board, and then the next thing you know, it's totally controlled by somebody else. Right. You know, that's how Nokia lost their company. They finally let they let some American be the CEO of Nokia for a little bit, and I guess he changed some board members. Next thing you know, they're with what was it, Samsung or something like that, and then now it's not even a Finnish company, and they even sold it all off, and now they don't have anything. But it's the art of infiltration. So like our political system's been so infiltrated, you know, those aren't even the important people anymore, you know, like those aren't the ones that are actually pulling the strings. So I don't know, where should I go from there? You got to keep me on track, because I'll go running off and get in a full circle somehow.
Right, I do the same thing. Let me read a couple things that I have written down, and then I'm sure that'll spark some discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Like I said, I've been into this for quite a while now myself. There's a court case called Penhollow versus Jones Administrators, and says, inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, and a creature of the mind only, a government can interface only with other artificial persons. The imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining party with the tangible. The legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with any other thing than corporate artificial persons and the contracts between them. And I got one more. This is Cruden versus Neal in 1796, and it's there. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institution. And I think that that's one of the strongest things that we have, is the right to say yes or say no. And and I think that kind of touches on Carl Lentz's tangent or principle or whatever, you know, like when his child was taken by the state, and he said, no, you're going to give me my property back, you know, because he did not give consent for the state to kidnap his child. Okay.
His big thing was he was acting like a man. Am I still muted out?
No, you're there.
Okay. His big thing was he's acting like a man, which, you know, when the judge was actually helping him, he was giving him the secret to how he should be coming in. Because like when you did I tell you about the I and the you? You know, like where when they say, do you understand the charges? You know, like that's performing joinder on you and your fictional name.
Right, that's when latches occurs.
Latches, okay. So I don't know if he's combining his rights, so he's reverting back to those, but he's actually putting forth his claim, then being the man, and then they have nothing on him because they can't. They're not forming a contract. So that's one of the other things you can do is like, well, you can just refuse to contract with them, because when you go in front of the judge, well, you're giving him permission to perform that, or to get that joinder. So then that's where you need to use your conditional things. Well, your conditional clauses. When you're speaking. So like it's all the simple parts of it are, it's all contract, it's all trust law, and you need to know a few of your definitions, and then from that standpoint, then it's up to see if they'll freaking follow the rules. Like they'll have them written, because right now I don't even think they're following the rules. Because now I think they're reverting back to this, well, the Constitution doesn't even exist anyway. Well, because if you go with if you read the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1917, I believe it is.
October 6, 1917.
Right, and then they modified it again in 33, but when they modified it in 33, they included it, they changed the definition to not only war, but also...
Yeah, they altered Section 5B.
Right, but it's a national emergency. They included national emergency, and right now in the books, I think we got about 6 of them going on at the same time.
Right.
And from 1917, we've been in a constant one. And then I guess they're reverting back to the Lieber laws or Lieber codes.
Yeah, from back in Lincoln's time.
Yeah, I printed those out, but
yeah,
I read some of those.
Lieber code. Yeah.
And then remember I was saying something about Talmud, right?
Yeah.
Well, they actually reconfirmed the basic Talmud laws back in the like 80s or 90s. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, what the heck is this Talmud stuff? I had to look it up on the internet and go like, well, what are these Talmud laws that they're talking about? And I guess there's 7 laws that even non-Jews are supposed to follow. Like eating the flesh from a live being or something. Like
or
dismembered body. It was some really weird shit. I'm sorry. But anyway, back to the Bill of Rights, and Patrick Henry, when he was giving his speech at the Virginia Constitutional Convention in 1788, he was even saying like, well, what are we going to waste? I mean, are we really going to waste paper, to not write these down? So by writing them down, because they didn't want him to write it down, but he's like, man, there's only like a few of them that we're going to write down. I mean, are we going to waste paper or what? It's not that big a deal to write these down. But by the simple fact of writing them down, the only way you can lose them is by you writing them back away.
Right.
So
we do that through application and registration.
Yeah, but then you can start getting into, I wouldn't say necessarily fraud, but you could void the contract because there wasn't a complete understanding. They didn't know what they were doing.
Right. Full disclosure.
Right. So, and that's another thing too. Is like, well, people have to actually know what the heck they're doing.
Informed consent.
Right. And what's really cool is, some other things I like to say is the real laws are the statutes at large, right? That's actual the law, and if you listen to Winston, those are, if they're prefaced and prefaced with the proper words from Title I, and then they have to contain certain information from Title I that makes it a law and makes it a liability upon all the people. Only if it contains that in that statute of large act or resolution or whatever they pass that gets in the statutes at large, then we become financially liable for that, whatever it says. But the statutes at large are the real laws. So like when you start reading back, that's what you really need to be looking at. not
Yeah.
the codes. The codes and the statutes and all that. That's kind of like the company. So, but we have been tacit in not maintaining our status correctly or separate. You know, when we're using that name or that number, you know, like the Social Security number or whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I'm trying
'Cause
to
I-
find statute. It's 12 statutes at large is the one I'm looking for. I can't remember exactly which one.
Well, the statutes at large are just those are just the laws on the book, and they're required to maintain those. And I cut the wrong. Oh wait, I think in 1933, around February timeframe, they passed all the judicial information in the statutes at large.
Right.
So that's like your best law book, you know, like because it's a simple, clear and thing, you know, like you know, Section 489 contract. What a contract is an agreement to do or not do something, you know, like I mean it just like clearly nice plain English, but I think they did it for like the Philippines or something or Costa Rica. Is why they passed it, but it was like, wow, this is like the judge's manual on keeping it simple, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they tried not to do. You know, sometimes they let a good tidbit slip through.
Yeah, and like Section 505, what's a mistake? A mistake, comma, what? A mistake may be either a fact or law. You know, I mean, it's like just simple. And the next thing is it defines what the mistake of fact is. You know, so yeah, so I printed out like that, you know, and it's got your, you know, deceit, fraudulent, rescission, but this was all, especially the stuff dealing with contract, you know, that's like your best guide right there. But that one was 72nd Congress, Session 2, I believe, or 1-1. Chapter 128, February 27, 1933.
What an important year 1933 was.
Well, yeah, because that's when they had the Emergency Banking Act. And when you read the statutes at large, they're like super simple up until 1933, you know,
Yep.
because they put everything in it, you know. And that's how far back I had to go, was like 1917 and 1913 to find the first money things. Like when they had the first what was it called? The
Trading with the enemy?
no, the first banking thing. When they did the first, well, I guess that was 33. But when they initiated it, that's why all the banking rules are under the Department of Agriculture. Is because when they established that bank, it was supposed to be only for the max that they were supposed to get up to was 400 million. And
Oh, you're talking about the Federal Agricultural
Reserve.
Relief Act.
Yeah, but that's the Emergency Banking Act, which gave
Well,
the
yeah.
Federal Reserve power, but it was under the Agricultural Clause or the Agricultural Department, because what they were really supposed to be doing was giving loans to farmers who were trying to deal with the Dust Bowl, and
Yep.
after 1920, all the farmers were broke, so they were supposed to be doing loans for them. But
I had that all written out in my notes here. The TWA, TWEA, the Federal Reserve Act, and the Agricultural Act. I have it all handwritten out in my notes here, and I'm actually just trying to find it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's why it's under that, and then you could even throw in the Titanic, you know, because the Titanic was actually part of the issue, because all the people that were opposed to the to this new banking thing, those people that opposed it were on the Titanic taking that first cruise, you know. So like they're like, hey, we can get rid of all these guys. It's kind of like the World Trade Center, you know, like, you know, like, well, what can we have a major thing and get rid of a lot of people that are causing problems.
Yep.
So it's crazy. Anyway, where did you want to go from there? Because actually, the gold. Hey, there's something I wanted to bring up. Was the gold-backed money and the silver-backed money, that's still there, and it's still in circulation. It's just nobody deposits their money in that form. Or there's a way you can actually endorse your checks and restrict it and have it deposited as you do that exchange. You know,
Right.
you can change it from the notes to the
To actual
gold-backed money. Yeah, even though you can't.
as opposed to legal tender.
Right. Yeah. There's actually a section in there too with that. That was something else I kind of wanted to bring up. It's
Here it
like,
is. I found it. It's the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933, 73rd Congress, Session 1, blah, 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 May 3rd, 1933. It's also known as Public Law 1073, HR 3835. And they actually created a corporation called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation for cotton options contracts. I've got all the sections written out and how the loan terms and everything. Basically, that's how they finally sold the rest of the land from the people, because they were floating them loans to bring them through the Depression at the time. But they structured the loans in such a fashion that it made it impossible for the landowners to pay them off. And when they took the loans, they gave up their allodial titles to the land.
yeah, and once you said that too, that also made me think that the whole reason you can't ever pay back a loan is because interest. Why doesn't anybody
Right.
ever talk about interest and usury? Because you're not supposed to. It's never produced. Nowhere in the system does interest ever enter into it. So you're in a. You might get it paid off, but in the end, the money's never there. I mean, like you're creating a debt on something or somebody, but there's never any way to possibly get that money back. And that's what the whole, that I think from the beginning, even Jesus was like beating people with ropes and flipping over tables,
Right.
over the usury and the money changers. So if people could get back on focus with the interest, because like you can't have interest. I mean, and it's such a debt
Interest
right
creates
now.
slavery. Period.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right here, Section 30B of the agricultural thing I was talking about says any joint stock land bank, because they created new banks in order to do this underneath the Federal Reserve Act, and it says applying for a loan under this section shall deliver to the Farm Loan Commissioner as collateral security, therefore, first mortgages on farm real estate owned by the bank in fee simple. So that right there in the contracts for getting loans from the government to help you through the Depression, you had to turn over your fee simple title to the land, and you can never get that back.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they did the same
and then
thing.
that's how they also took over all the other banks out there also. And then they started
Right.
making them follow the rules, and then they slowly put them out of business so that they were the only one, in the big scheme of things. That's how they kind of started whittling everybody else out, started gaining these titles. So actually, we're supposed to be talking about history too. So, and here's the other funny thing. A nice guy in Australia, he went and researched all this, and then he found out about the Talmud laws and all that. But who's actually making claim is
The Pope.
the Jesuits in the Vatican.
Yep.
Supposedly are making their claim off of their,
A papal bull.
3 of them, and it's all 3 of those papal bulls are under the Triple Crown of Pontiff, and they're claiming all the land, all the people, and even the souls.
Yes.
It's like,
Whether you're Catholic or not.
yeah. Well, and actually, I wish people could see that too, because like, the contract. What's the marriage contract? Nowadays, a marriage contract's a 4-party contract. It's
Really, what's the third? What's the fourth party? Because I only knew of it as 3.
Well, it would be the government.
Well, that's the third party.
No, the church is the third party.
Okay, well, I think
The government was the one that edged in there, because it used to be you didn't have to go get a license for anything, like you just went to the church and then the church gave you a license to get married, right? So, and then the next step was, well, now you got to go get your state license, so the state can start claiming, because what they're doing is the state or the nation is claiming you as property. Because if your mother and father they're considering them chattel, anything that their chattel produces, they're making claim on it.
Right.
So how do you prove it? Like, well, we got the marriage contract right here that says, you agreed to this.
Right. The way I understood it or came through that was, basically, again, whether it's accurate or not, is that when you're born, the birth certificate creates a corporation with a name like yours. So when you get married, it's the merger of 2 companies, and that's only done through licensing.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
partnership.
Right.
Yeah, you're correct. But I'm just trying to say that, well, the church has got their little fingers in there too. So
yeah, I don't know why I don't know
it's-
why I've got it wrote down, but I've got active January 16th, 1883, volume 22, United States Statutes at Large, page 403. I'd have to look that up.
Yeah. So going back to license, that's where you fall back onto the Trading with the Enemies Act. So what the Trading with the Enemies Act did was it kind of suspended the Constitution, and then made the president and the treasurer the 2 people in charge. And then anybody that did any type of commerce outside of that, so any flow of any monies, had to be licensed, or you had to have permission from the president under license or his designated representative or whatever. So, and then that's how they lost all their power. And then you could even get super technical when you start talking about, well, the flags and stuff. Well, flags are symbols of marking jurisdiction. And then you can get into
fringe and all that.
Yeah, but you have to get into like an army manual on flag usage and stuff like that.
Eisenhower even said something about that in one of his presidential addresses.
Yeah, well, because it is the military is really picky on what and when and where and how, but it marks jurisdiction, and then once you start reading jurisdiction, even when we plant that flag in some other country, we're claiming it. Our flag's there. Everything around this flag, we're claiming it. And I think that's why we've been in all these other countries, planting our flag.
The moon.
Making everybody, join our little system, which is fiat, which drives me crazy too, because now you're talking fiat, where this is fake. Who cares? This is where you get into accounts of what do you call it? Accounts of monies of account and monies of exchange. Those are your 2 types of money. So when you actually
courts of exchequer.
Say it again.
With the courts of exchequer, there's another name for it.
Well, there's only 2 types of money, and it's monies of account and monies of exchange.
Yeah.
So when you actually physically work, you're creating monies of exchange.
Which is the physical in your hand.
Right.
And monies of account is that which is in an account book.
That's just
only by somebody's fucking handwriting somewhere.
Yeah, that's how they expand it. So they talk about our economy expanding and collapsing. Well, yeah, they've been expanding it, but they've never been collapsing it, because we haven't been cashing in our labor and creating it. And, so like technically when we work and then we took our paycheck, which could be monies of account, but then when we go deposit it, if we deposited it and made it a monies of exchange, and then deposited it as into the gold-backed, monies that are technically still there, where they were there, but the rules are still there on the books, so it's kind of like a get out thing. But you have to. So that's kind of like another specialty area, where you gotta listen to the guys that talk about money.
Yeah, because the Federal Reserve note was only supposed to be internal currency for the government to exchange value or whatever between each of its agencies. It wasn't supposed to be released to the public. And I gotta find that. I got it wrote down here. Federal Reserve Act. What is it?
See, I don't know about
Here,
that
I
one.
got it right here. Federal Reserve Act of 1913, Section 13 states, any Federal Reserve Bank may receive from any of its member banks and from the United States deposits of current funds in lawful money being exchanged, national bank notes, Federal Reserve notes, or checks and drafts upon solvent member banks for solely for the exchange purposes may receive other Federal Reserve banks deposits. That's not what I'm looking for here. But it's they shall be redeemed in gold upon demand, U.S. Treasury. Because it specifically says for no other purpose, and I'm not finding it right here. But, and they're supposed to hold 40% of. Every bank is supposed to hold 40% of its deposits in gold. Right here is
40. No, it's only 10.
Well,
It's
when
10%.
this was written, when
It was written.
yeah, it was 40%.
Yeah, well, and that was from the old times when the gold people, the jewelers, and the people that actually held the gold, they figured out that nobody ever pulled more than 10% of their gold out at any one time.
Right, they started trading receipts.
So then that's how you get your, negotiable instruments, which now you need to get into UCC, I think, what is it, Chapter 3 or Section 3, and start reading
I don't
what...
have my UCC book, it's in storage. I actually have a Uniform Commercial Code of 2012.
Yeah, but you just need to know the definitions, and then
Right.
figure out the holder in due course, what a check is, and all the names, and then how do you endorse them? Special endorsements, conditional endorsements, without recourse. So negotiable instruments. That's just it's an area where so these are just terms and simple terms that people need to understand, and once you start understanding some of these more basic simple terms,
Here it is. Instrument, page 719, a written document per the UCC subsection 3-104 and 8-102, and is writing which is evidence of a right to the payment of money.
Yeah. So that's, and then you have different types of those financial instruments. So it's just you have to understand that that's what they're calling it in there. So like when you're talking about monies, we're just talking about instruments, but your Federal Reserve notes are just instruments. So like, but it's a note. I mean. Right. It's not a check. It's not any of these other types. And then so now you get back into rights. Well, anything that so we gave up the right. We gave the government the right to do something. Well, if we gave it to them, that means we had it before we had permission to do that before we gave it to them. Well, what says that we lost our permission to keep doing that?
Or lost our right to take that back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We had the right to take it back.
Yeah, but see now you get into Lysander Spooner's argument, and it's like, well, technically it's not even a valid contract that we have, so technically we still have all these rights.
Right.
I mean, you know, like, but who's going to press the issue? So now here's where the problem is. Okay, so I hate bringing up problems without some kind of solution.
But that's why we're here today.
So the solution is well, the jury determines the law. You know, like, well, they determine whether or not they would have done it themselves, whether it's a right or a wrong, and then you get your definition of right or wrong. Did it cause harm to somebody, or did it not harm somebody? And then that jury is the one that makes that decision. So they could say, well, according to the law, you're guilty, but when the jury says, well, you're innocent, and the judge has to dismiss the case because, you know, the jury rules. I mean,
yeah, jury nullification.
Exactly. So the problem is what we need to do is be able to figure out how to bring our own grand juries about and actually start. This is where the other guy, who's the guy from Australia?
That one I don't know.
He's.
I probably know, but I just don't.
Yeah, I put that link there in the the thing, and he had the 4 sessions or 3 sessions. But when we file our complaint, you know, our complaint or our claim, you know, there's only 3 documents you need, you know, which turns into a bill or whatever. If you really need to watch his videos.
Can you put a link in the chat?
It's in our for this one.
Okay.
Satori, go and look at.
I'll look it up right now.
Look at mine's real quick on this discussion board, because I put that in there, right? But he has a website, and it's not the Ubuntu, but it's something really close to that.
There's so many of them.
But well, Ubuntu is South Africa, and this one is Australia. But this is the guy that did the research to find all the way back to Talmud law, Carolina law, Roman law, and but he's like the resident expert on law. But if you at least get his first 4 little seminar things in, then that gives you a really good ballpark on where to go to from. Because like the only people that challenged the Catholic Church to their papal bulls was Luther. And Luther was the one that was like trying to say, hey, you know, that's not right, and this is wrong, and this is why it's wrong, or whatever. And then that's why they had to break away on that part of that religion. But
the church usury was bad. Asking alms from poor people was bad. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but what this guy did was he's trying to go back in law and do it the correct way and say, well, this is where we messed up, and then this is how we need to make our claims. Man, see, I'm on my wrong computer because otherwise I could just click it real quick and look.
Yeah, I've got about 100 gigabytes of this stuff stored on my hard drive.
Yeah, but see, you got to keep it simple. You know, and that's where, you know, because what happens is that's the trick, you know. So like now you can start talking about mind games and stuff like that. Well, if you make it complicated enough, like, and that's what the guy was trying to say, was like, well, there is no rule of law now because it's so complicated now. It'd take you 33 years to get through all the laws that are on the book. So technically there is no law, you know, I mean, rule of law, because nobody's following it. If we can't understand the basics, and that's why we're talking about this, is because, like, well, when you understand the basics, some of that other stuff doesn't even matter anymore. I mean, like the statues, you wipe your butt with it, you know.
Right.
It's not worth.
One of the first things I touched on was, you know, when I started getting into all this stuff, you know, I was reading all these acts, codes, statutes, and all that stuff, and trying to put all the pieces together to, you know, kind of be able to walk into court confidently and be like, look, Your Honor, you know, this is what's really going down. You know, the officer made a mistake thinking he had jurisdiction over me and all this other stuff. And it doesn't matter if you're right and if you're knowledgeable. It's you.
Right.
It's how do we hold them accountable to the laws that they're saying are applying to you? Because they're under more restrictions and under more laws than we are, but we don't have any way to affect any force against them and say, get your fucking hands off me.
But see, we don't understand what's going
You know what
on
I
in
mean?
there. Like when you go into the courthouse, it's kind of like walking into the food mart, or the what's the food place at the mall? Food court.
Yeah.
You got like about 5 or 6 different
Yeah, you
items
made that
you can
difference.
choose from, and if you go into statutory court where all they hear is statutory stuff, then they can't hear it. It's like, I mean, you just say, well, hey, I need to skip this, and you might as well just go ahead and put me in this court because that court can't help me. And then you can start talking about status. Well, what is your status? Have you clarified your status? Have you corrected your status? So, and that's another aspect of it.
Right.
And that's where Winston Shroud helps you
Right here in
become American national or whatever. So actually, if you have $120, it's probably a good idea to get his latest info, his package from Solutions in Commerce, and work on becoming an American national, because you hold a different status.
Yeah.
And what it's really doing is it's proving and documenting that you're not an enemy. Huh?
my goal is to try to become stateless.
Stateless. Well,
Is my goal.
it's not. You just want to hold a different status. So now we have to start talking about class, because class is the really simple one. You have to know what class you are, and because everything they deal with deals on class, and that's why the church likes their status and the prince or whatever. So when you get into Law of Nations, what Cicero does is he describes the ranking and the duties, the who, the what, when, where, and why. That's why they call the American Indians the Aboriginal. Well, there's nothing ab about them. They're the original inhabitants.
Aboriginal.
AB means, but if you look up AB in Latin, it means it changes their class or their status to where they have nothing. It puts them down at the very bottom. I think it even includes like wild or animal or something like that. It's like, no, they're the original. And that's where I try to get. I hate it when people use Aboriginal.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's original. Don't ever let them call you ab anything. No, you're original.
Yep.
But and then when I was talking about Law of Nations,
Well, that's like the word human. When somebody says I'm human.
Yeah, and you can play around with all those terms too.
Go ahead.
Like Homo sapien. I did a little spiel on mine not too long ago. And I started using the homo. I'm homo. Which just means many or a group. So freaking they hijack our words and change the meanings of them. And actually, that's the reason the original dictionary was put in place, was so that they wouldn't change the definition. Because when you go on the Supreme Court, they don't use Black's Law Dictionary; they use a straight dictionary. Yeah.
Webster's 1828.
Yeah. So and what happens is over time they try to change the definition to mean something else. So back in Talmud law, what happened was the Zionists or whatever, the Jesuits, not the Jesuits, but the Zionists, the Jews, what they wanted to do was have their law written for their custom for just their people. Well, they had they had some people like Ezekiel and somebody, but they wrote them in Arabic, and then they also had representatives in the Roman court. So, but they could write it straight out, and the Arabs didn't mind in Arabic, the laws, and they didn't have any problem being, mean or brutal or whatever. So they would just pass those straight away in Arabic. But in the Roman court under Caesar and in the empire, they had to talk Caesar into accepting it, because like before it could get into law, it had to be blessed by him. And what would happen was they would have to word it all kind of funny, like so like they could, and that's where they got into their wordsmithing at, like, well, it looks like on the outside it says this, but really it says something else. And so they kind of got into the habit of that, and then that law ended up getting passed forward and on, and that's how our law actually ended up getting confusing, is because the way they wanted to try to get it written, they couldn't get it passed by just saying it straight up, nice and easy terms. That's why it's a joke when you look at the freaking Obamacare laws, like it's probably as tall as me if you stack it up end on end, paper on paper. It's like there's no way you could know any of that or follow any of that. So like no matter what you do, you're breaking the law.
Right. It's rife with obfuscation.
Yeah. And then
they try to color everything to make it difficult to understand, so that when you try to act in good faith, and you end up being against their law anyway.
So yeah, then you get into that rules for radicals, and you make your enemy follow the rules where you don't follow them yourself. So like, which gets into like Hillary Clinton's little email thing, like, well, she's applying this rule against, like, who was the general that got fired, Petraeus, but not following the rule herself. It's like, you're killing me here. Like, how do you not see this as a problem? Like, and then you can start getting into classified information. Like, now we're talking treason. Like, how hard is it to write a complaint up? But they're not applying the rules to them. In their system, they're only applying it to us. Anybody that goes against them, or anybody that says anything against them, and then that's how they're manipulating the system.
Goes back to the trading with the enemy.
Yeah, well, they're treating everybody like an enemy. Right. So unless you get your name removed from the list,
a part of the machine,
you're on the list, and they consider each state a country. So even trading between states, well, you got to have a license. You don't have a license, right. Then like, well. But then that one guy had a good 14th Amendment argument. He had a good spiel on there. The guy that was trying to become a senator or whatever to help try to correct it. Oh, yeah. So you get into politics now, and see, like politics, everybody thinks they're in just a two-party system, but the problem is, like even if you vote for somebody else, who's counting the votes? Who's watching over the shoulder of the people counting the vote? And then when you start getting electronical, that's where it even gets worse, because like, well, if it's electronical and you don't have a printout of that, of that vote,
a paper receipt,
so you can do a recount, how do you know that the output is correct? Like, how are you going to double check this? There was a county just west of me that had like 130% participation, and the percentage was like some weird, ungodly, just statistically impossible, vote. It's like, well, one, you don't have that many over 18-year-olds in the county, and then 98 or 90-some% of them voted for, Obama. It's like, how does this not hit the news? Like, how do you justify this? Where's this recount? How do you challenge this? Because like, so that then you get into the understanding, well, it doesn't matter who you vote for, like, as long as you control the cities, and those people in the cities outnumber all the people in the rest of the state.
Right.
And that's the game. that's the game they played, and that's the game they figured out how to win. But what's cool about it is it's not an obvious one anymore, because when they go out and they give their speeches, you can see the crowds and you can go, well, hey, that doesn't look right, like, I mean, it's a mental flaw in our thinking, like, well, it's easier to persuade somebody if the group is with you, then people like to be a part of the group, and then if they're told that this group is winning, then it's human nature to want to be on the winning side, or be on the side that is right or correct.
Yeah, good thing.
Yeah, but it's just so you get into the mind and hacking the mind and stuff like that. That's
okay. So,
sorry, I'm getting off track again.
obviously, you and I, we kind of done a lot of, looking into the past and reading a lot of the statutes and philosophers like Spooner and Cicero, and we could go on and keep like that. But I think what we need to do is figure out, how do we begin enforcing our will by I'm trying to think. I lost my thought here.
Yeah, you just want to try to figure out, how do we get it back in place? Well, see, now I could get into some really weird stuff.
It's sort of having like another like French Revolution style event. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, do you actually know what's going on in the financial world? I mean, like, do you know what current world events are with the Brink system and all that, and the dragon families?
Brazil, Russia, India, China creating their own petrodollar scenario.
Yeah, so what they did, that's why they took out all these people in the Middle East.
Right.
They were trying to clean up the rest of the people and get them on the same fiat money system where nobody knows what's going on. It's the same. That's the reason you have the EU. The European Union is to get the power away from the state that it's in, or the country that it's in, and then you consolidate it, and then you get your little, your hidden part controlling that part, and there's no way to stop it. So, like, and that was something else about common law. Common law is only in this country, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand,
Canada,
and Canada.
That's the other one.
And then I think everybody else is pretty much statutory. So, like, only this common law applies to those locations. So this is where you get that I status. So, like, how you play the game when the other places at, it's a little more confusing. But so solutions is what you wanted.
Well, that's what we really need. I mean,
money. Well, what's happening, or the way the potential correction is going right now, is that the Chinese dragon family created another financial system to compete with our system.
Kind of like Bitcoin is a casting off of the chain.
Yeah, see, the only thing I don't like about Bitcoin is you still don't know how do you create it. I mean, like, and that was the one thing that I didn't like when the Red Dragon was talking about the new system, or the gold-backed system. Was, well, he mentioned one time where he said that, well, the gold's never going to come out of those vaults that are all over the world. There's nations that are hosting vaults.
Right, it's never going to be repatriated.
Well, you're never going to get that gold out, which technically, what the heck are you going to do with gold anyway? You can't eat it, can't build your house out of it. What are you going to do with it? But the point is it's only monies of account. So they're taking this gold and saying, okay, well, there's this much gold, and then now we're going to create this monies of account. But if you never touch the gold, it's the same thing as our fiat system. The only difference is you have the illusion of, well, there's gold behind it. So what does that mean? Like, does it mean, like, well, if I finance my house and I can't pay back my mortgage or whatever, does that mean that I forfeit my house to another country? See, that's okay. Here's another guy that you don't probably know about, Lycurgus. He was in Sparta, and he was like brother to one of the kings or uncles to one of the kings, and the king was a kid or something. But he had to go off and stay in Greece. Um, and what he did was when he was in Greece, or he stayed down in Crete, trying to hide away because they would have just killed him just to keep him from being able to be king. And this is another place that our laws kind of came from. And then when the boy king got a little bit older and he came back, he instituted some rules because he learned some stuff from a sage down there in Crete. Well, when he got back to Sparta, he learned to slowly integrate these changes that he wanted to make that he learned while he was there. And then he made the people promise that they'll keep him in these laws or whatever in place if he died, you know. So then he went off and disappeared and more or less died or whatever, or he just disappeared. But our law system, they idolize this guy in that small change process. But one of the changes that he made was he made Spartans use only iron for their monies. So that way it's not valuable outside of Sparta. So that's a way to control the money system inside an element. So the new system that we're talking about that's getting put into place, what's going to happen is that the money's not going to leave. Well, actually, it's going to leave, but dang. Anyway, you have to make you shouldn't be trading in between countries of monies. It should be of goods, something of value. This is where they get that pound for pound. And when you're dealing with fiat money, there's no pound there. It's pound for paper, you know, for nothing, you know, like an illusion, you know. People have to get a more firmer grasp on their illusions of what's actually out there and what's actually going on with these monies of account, because they just imaginally appear things into existence, you know, when technically there should be some paper there that's based off of something.
A receipt.
Yeah, and then here's the other deal. Is like, well, if you want to call me a slave, well, why the heck am I paying the bills? You know, like, well, you need to forward this bill to whoever owns me. You know, like, it's their bill, it's their problem.
Scenario.
So you see how that kind of works? It's like, well, hey, you know, like, well, if I am the slave, then what the heck am I doing paying? You know, working for this? Yeah, because I should be working. When I'm working, I'm earning these monies of exchange.
Well, they keep us so taxed or whatever that it just, and with all these regulations that, you know, you just basically break even at the end of your labor.
That's really what the healthcare law was all about. That Obamacare thing was like, well, we just haven't got to the point where, you know, half of everything you make, it puts everybody in the same status. You know, like I used to tease guys in Finland about that, you know, like, you know, going to a bar and say, well, why do you guys pay 50% of your, you know, whatever you make in taxes? You know, how smart is that? You know, and the first thing they come back with, well, we have free health care. And I'm like, okay.
It's free if you pay 50% of your income to it.
Exactly. And I go, well, when was the last time you went to the doctor? You know, like, don't you think it should be cheaper just to pay for what you use? You know, like, I mean, instead of paying everything, you know, so like it's a luxury to actually have a vehicle in Finland. And the Clintons used to go there all the time. And they were like, oh, this is a good system, you know, because everybody's poor, you know, like everybody's the same, you know, there's no difference between anybody, you know, because they can't make anything. And then you think, well, hey, you know, like I'll get a second job and I'll earn more money, you know, so I can have more money to spend. Well, they start off that, if you get a second job, they start off with 38% tax on your income from that second job just to keep you from taking a second job. You know, so you never get ahead. You know, it's a crazy system. But that's what they're trying to make. They're trying to mimic that here, you know, and that's why they needed that healthcare law to pass. And that's why they don't want us to be able to defend ourselves too. So that's why they're attacking the second, you know, the Second Amendment or the Bill of Rights, yeah, Second Amendment.
Yep.
You know, Because if you can't even protect yourself, then well, they can enforce whatever they want on you. You know, like, what are you going to do
They'll have
about
a
it?
monopoly of force.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to go for, and that's pretty much how all of it is. It's a monopoly of force on your protection, monopoly of force on your monies of exchange. You know, money. You know, so. And I lost the third point I was going to make.
Sorry, I wasn't tracking what you said.
Okay.
Usually, sorry.
So
So we talked too long, right?
No, we're pushing up against 2 hours. So let's
Okay.
wrap things up, and I guess we'll start with you. Be smart. Just basically what you want to like. Your thoughts. Wrap them up in kind of like a short.
Okay. So the important thing out there for people to start figuring out is that, one, we're in a representative republic, so we put these people there. You need to understand your contract law. You have to understand trust, and that's just 3 parties. You got to understand who you are, between the difference between the I and the you, and what those are defined as. You need to know your rights, and look up your rights and look up your maxims of law. Your maxims of law are just those things that nobody can argue with you about them. You know, so you find your maxims, and pick out a few that are really good, and learn those, and start applying them. It's simple stuff if you keep it simple. And the Law of Nations is a really good book that gives you reference on why and purpose of everything. So if you can get those basics down, I mean, this would be so much easier. And then all we have to do is start making those people that are in the courts, or by creating our own courts, because we have the right to do that. And that's where you get into understanding your rights. So anyway, that's pretty much all I got to say.
Okay, I like that, keeping it simple. And I think that's where we kind of veered off course, and even purposely they wanted to make it more complex. So like.
Well, they make it complex so that you won't attempt to understand it. So when you keep it simple to those basics, so I kind of went in depth and explained how it kind of got there, but you have to if you just keep your core basics, contract, you know, what an application is, how you're begging, you know, and what you're forfeiting up, how to make those conditional acceptances, rescinding things, simple little things, you know, can make your life so much easier. You know, just keep it simple and let them deal with the complicated stuff.
Yeah, I like that. And then, House, you want to wrap up your thoughts on everything? And
yeah, rather than going through like I did or Smart did and pounding the books for hours and hours and hours, there's a lot of other guys who've also put up a lot of good information on YouTube. Dean Clifford, Carl Lentz, Winston Strout, William Dale Faust, and you know, if you can spend just, you know, maybe an hour a day listening to what these guys have to say, because they've spent years and years putting this together too, and they'll give you big pieces of the puzzle to kind of put this all together and to help keep it simple, because these guys figured out that, you know, too, that you got to keep it simple. If not, you're just going to get caught up in their web. We need to learn more about grand juries and jury nullification, and probably a couple other topics off the top of my head. Watch the Goldsmith's Tale on YouTube, you know, about money. And yeah, we got a good cover of the background for law today, but I think that maybe the next time we get together and do this, kind of more solution-based discussion, as opposed to how we got here, more of where do we go from here.
yeah, and I think this is what this was a good start of kind of just like brainstorming and getting ideas out there. But next time when we do this. I think maybe we should start doing this every 2 weeks or whatever. But I'll leave. I'll leave it kind of up to you guys to start trying to plan this. So I think Saturdays would be a good day to do it, or whatever day works for you. And we'll keep on doing this, but we'll make it kind of like we'll have a little bit more structure next time, as far as, you know, maybe one day we do the basics, right? And we hammer on keeping it simple, or we'll come up with something like that. I kind of like that, keeping it simple. And then we go into the maximum laws or whatever, and then we'll get into maybe a little bit more of the history or whatever, and different resources to look into, and then also backing that up, well, keeping it simple and solutions. I think that's a good way to start moving forward with all this topic. So I'd like to thank you guys for coming in and getting really into this. There's a lot more we could start doing with the show, and next time we'll get a little bit more structure to this. So that would be it for now.